you all very much. I'm sure many of you are wondering, what on earth is SiriusXM doing at a financial conference? So, we'll give a little bit of background. This is about the probably fourth or fifth time I've done this particular presentation in just the past 6 months. And every time I do it, this field is changing so rapidly that I have to literally go back and update the presentation a lot. Michael saw it in Palm Springs and said this is something that he thought a lot of people, especially in your field, would find valuable. So even though it's not specifically targeted at financial markets, I have added a bunch of stuff about it in here, and hopefully you'll find it interesting and valuable. I guess the best description of it was to say we are entering an era of multimodal design. Now, how many of you even know what that means? Yay, good. Usually I have to, but we're going to go back. So click the next slide. I need a clicker. Thank you. Otherwise, I could just say click this, and it would be green button makes it go, huh? All right. I do not have eagles and mountains. I do, however, have the Iron Throne. Because to me, this is how the show should have ended. But HBO had different opinions, apparently. So to start the level set, what is a multimodal interface? A multimodal interface, the technical definition, is they allow you to seamlessly integrate 2 or more senses when interacting with a system. So you can engage with that system in much more the same way you engage with the real world around you. You don't just click a screen. You don't just talk to a box and have it talk back. Usually there's multiple senses involved. And really great user experiences are going to start relying on these multiple senses. So the newest addition into this area are the infamous smart displays, the Echo Show, the new Google Nest Home Max, the large, the small ones. So you're starting to get into these type of devices. How many of you have one of these? Okay, I have something interesting, stats, because we're financial people and we do statistics. Growth of smart displays. In 2017, when these were introduced, by the end of that year, there was less than 3% market penetration. By the end of 2018, it was 12.3% of homes had it. That is a I lost my sound. It's a 558% increase in just 1 year from when these devices came in. Out of that, these stats came from last week. In September of 2019, there are 9.6 million installed smart displays in the United States. Amazon controls 59% of the market. It's down. Google and their partners have gone up. They now control 39% of the market. Facebook has a device, but it has 2%, but it uses Alexa. So these are the main players in this particular space. But that growth in those devices is not slowing down. And Strategy Analytics is showing that by 2023, they're showing 100 million homes. 100 million of these devices in the market, and that's just over the next 4 years. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm working on automotive stuff, I have a fair amount of lead time in product design and development where you have to think ahead. So this is a number you need to be watching as things move forward. So the question is, why are these devices, which to be honest, are not optimized? Even if you go to the Amazon Alexa site, the developers thing, it'll tell you these are primarily voice devices and these screens enhance, but they're not actually part of the experience. They limit you to the templates you can use. They limit you to you can only have one template. There's all these rules because they're still learning about these devices as well. So why, if they're so limited, are these numbers going up like this? And I think it has to do for 3 reasons. If you look at these stats, it said we type about 40 words a minute, typing, texting, whatever it is, when you're entering letters. We speak at 130 words a minute, but we read at 250 words a minute. So what happens is if you look at those numbers, what that tells you is that the optimal experience for interacting with any device may possibly be talk in, display out. It's just a matter of efficiency. So that is precisely what these multimodal devices will give you. Talk in, display out. So let's take a task that we do every day. This used to be ordering beer, but it's lunchtime, so I calmed it down. We're gonna order coffee because we've never done that before, any of us. So we have a lovely restaurant with a charming person who will talk to us and we can talk back, who has a toned voice. So I can tell from attitude and emotion that they're happy for me to be there. There is a board behind them with prices, information, menu items. I can see all of these things and I'm interacting. And that's a human interaction. So let's take the same task and we're going to use it only with a graphic user interface. So we've got a GUI. We're looking at, we can see all the categories of beverages down the side. You guys have all designed stuff like this. We can see options within each of the categories because when you click the tab, you see the pictures. We have photos to help you scan, just immediately identify things. You can see the prices. You can see which beverages you've already ordered with the little green tabs. You can see how many items are in your shopping cart. You have all these things. And on one hand, the benefits of this are really kind of self-evident in that it's discoverable. I can see everything on the menu. I can see what everything costs. I know all the calorie counts. I know everything about it. It's great. It's learnable. I learn very quickly that if I click the blue side, the pictures change. So I can figure out how to use it very, very quickly. And there's visual cues that I can differentiate all the items by price. And I have all the time in the world. I can sit and look at this thing for 2 hours. I can analyze every ingredient. I can look for whatever it is I want, and I'm not rushed. On the other hand, this is slow. I will go through the stuff, and you pick the order, and you click the button, and I may have to visit, if I'm not logged in, or if I am logged in, I may have to visit 5 screens just to purchase some coffee. It requires personal info. Go to one of these sites and lose your password. What was your high school mascot? Does your last name contain the letter E? I don't know. I have to answer all this stuff just to get back in, just to buy a cup of coffee. So we're going back to, did we mention it's slow? And remember, you can only type 40 words a minute. So you'll go back with this information and somebody will say, I know, let's make it a voice app or a chatbot. It will be so much faster. Okay. Hey Google, what's today's featured coffees? Okay, Marty, we have a pumpkin spice latte, a salted caramel mocha frappuccino, a nitro cold brew, a vanilla latte, a blonde vanilla latte, a blonde skinny vanilla latte. Stop! That one 3 things ago you said was the one that I wanted. How did you can't stop it. So on one hand, VUIs are great if you know precisely what you want. I would like a grande mocha frappuccino, and a cranberry scone. Very precise, it'll understand that. I know precisely how to say it. Have you guys noticed the secret code at Starbucks? Like you go up and say, I want a non-fat cocktail, and then the person will read back your order and they change the order of the words around. So it's like this, or an In-N-Out, where there's a magic secret thing, like a protein style, animal style burger that's not on the menu anywhere. So if you know precisely how to say it, you can talk to a VUI. One of the best ones, if you are in an environment where your hands and eyes are occupied doing something else, like, I don't know, driving a car, trying to change your radio station. And you're in an environment that doesn't have a lot of background noise. These things will pick up all the conversations around you, so it has to be fairly quiet, which is why there's not voice on the kiosks at McDonald's. It's a little tough to do voice there. On the other hand, it is terrible at presenting choices. If you've got more than 3 choices, they're not going to remember. They're not going to be able to follow along. It gives the user no time to consider anything, which we'll get into in a minute. Ask a question, you have to respond right back. Because privacy concerns, it'll turn off. That microphone will shut off if there's no response within a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds. So voice interfaces are expecting an immediate response in context. And you've got highly limited navigation options. You go down the path, da-dun, 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 da-dun. And you can't jump from here to here. That's not how this works. So David Mercer, who was an analyst at Strategy Analytics, basically said voice-only interfaces will certainly have a key role in all the simple interactions, or just turning on a light bulb and listening to music, but voice on its own is not necessarily the best input and output mechanism when it comes to more complex tasks. All of you do complex tasks. Yes, you don't just make an investment. It's not how this works. So we're just at the beginning, however, of what I'm affectionately dubbed as a multimodal era, where all of these devices that we've been designing for, that we're looking at as display, GUI, voice, all these pieces are now all starting to merge into one big bucket. And for those of us who came from a visual design world, it was bad enough when we suddenly had Alexa, and then all of a sudden we're trying to merge all this stuff together. Well, this is a fun new learning task for me, but we'll see how we do. So luckily, we're all at the beginning of it. There's not best practices out there. There's no books for this. If you go on and start Googling for it, you can't believe how little information there is on these particular areas. So the first one, the smart displays. Let's take a look at what we've got to work with here. The smart displays are the most evident, or the newest entry into it. They are really limited. And they really truly are voice interaction speakers with prearranged templates. However, I have great faith that Google and Amazon, two small companies not known for their innovation, will figure this out very rapidly, that these things have far more potential. They got it into the market almost as an MVP. There's no reason to think these things aren't going to evolve, especially considering the numbers of them that they're selling. I can't wait to see what fourth quarter numbers are on these devices. The phone is going multimodal. Now look at this stuff. Now you not only talk to Siri, but look at all the things it's teaching you, because that list problem I told you about, now they're starting to build in visual cues in addition to the voice work that's going on. And of course, my personal favorite, the multimodal device you guys use every day, is the one in your car. Because you push the button, you talk, you touch navigation system, it goes back and forth, and it has the added bonus thing of making sure that you're not distracted because you're driving. I have to know the difference whether the car is moving or whether it's not based on what you can do. There's features I have to disable for obvious reasons, because you don't exactly want to be doing this stuff while you're driving down the road. On the other end, the chatbots are now moving, so now they're moving into the middle. This is Erica. I'm sure all of you know Erica. Erica had, Bank of America reported 6.3 million users of Erica in the first quarter of 2019, up 4.8 million from the previous quarter. Okay, that is 1.5 million new users per quarter. Chatbots have been around a long time. What is it that's happening that it's so different? And what this is are these integration of this visual, speech, touch, all of these things. And where is everybody going? Here, the ultimate multimodal device. The gigantic smart TV is going to live in your house and control everything. It knows your thermostat. It knows what stock prices. You can give you stock alerts in the morning. And all this information can transfer right to your phone and right to your tablet into this big integrated thing. Everybody all living in peace and, happiness and wonder. But that's where it's headed. And you will talk to your television when you come in the house. You're not used to that, but you will. It won't take long because all these other devices are now training you. So here's the problem. This stuff is all moving, but it's outrunning us. We're letting down our smart display users by not optimizing our content for these devices. It's not how we think. How many of you have a separate voice, like person in your company that does just voice? They're like by themselves. You have to bring the content strategists. You have to bring these people over because now they're going to start having a really, really integrated piece in the visual designs and the UIs that you're building. Users want to love these devices. You can tell that by the numbers and the way they're trying to adopt them. But the adoption of non-display smart speakers is still rising slightly faster than the one with the displays. There's a question of whether or not that was because of price, because obviously the ones with the displays cost more. But I think it has a lot to do with they get the smart display and they get a device for another room and realize that the smart display really wasn't doing anything all that different than the non-speaker version. And a lot of that is restrictions that, like I said, Amazon and Google have put on that, but I know I have faith to learn. So the other thing is when you look at these, the device, they show the same 3 demos. They show somebody cooking, because you're in a kitchen doing stuff with your hands and you can't stop, so they show some kind of recipe cooking thing. They show smart home control. Everybody's adjusting thermostats and locking and unlocking doors and turning on security systems, and they're doing video chat. Usually talking to older parents, so you can stay in contact. There is a potentially huge competitive edge for services that can take advantage of this gap if you can be forward thinking and start getting in front of this as this becomes more and more common. I genuinely believe if you're ready for it and you've built something that's optimized to take advantage of these devices, how people actually think and work, it's a big win there. So how do you do that? Well, let's look at some of the common VUI problems and how a multimodal interface can solve them, because a lot of you I know are working in voice space and chatbot space. The first problem you have to deal with is the cognitive load. By the way, these slides are all posted so you don't have to take notes, and I'm not going to talk through all this stuff. The big problem is, this is something that comes up in the car all the time. Voice is a very transient interface. When it asks you a question, you have to answer right then. So what happens is when Alexa or the Google Assistant talks to you, you don't realize it, but you hyper-focus on that device. Because you can't control how fast it's going to ask you the question. You can't reread it. There's no permanency to it, so you listen. And this cognitive load then requires that the VUI be kept really short. It has to ask you a quick question, get on your response, and it comes back. This is what this actually looks like in the real world, these peaks of attention. So at a peak moment on a VUI, when it says something and you start listening, that's your focus level, including when you're driving, which I have to pay attention to. Same thing, so now it goes back and gives you a response, and it asks a question, and you peek again. A graphic user interface, remember the coffee thing we looked at? Because it's permanent, and you have all this time. You actually don't have to pay that much attention to it, or you don't in the real world, even though you may be focused on it. You know it's going to be there. You have time to look at it. So multimodal interfaces provide all the advantages of a VUI, but can follow that GUI attention curve, not overload the users at one time. For those of you who say, what did I learn at school today? Linguistics people. There's something called Grice's maxims. 4 of them you have to learn. There's a maximum of quantity. This one's really important. Give as much information as needed, but no more. Reason to get carried away about this. Marketing departments should learn that one. The maximum of quality. Be truthful. Has to be evidence to back it up. Relation, be relevant, only say things that are pertinent right now. Do not feel, again, marketing has a bad problem with this. My apologies to people for marketing here. And the maximum of manner. You have to be clear, brief, and orderly to avoid obscurity. Now, I'll give you, because this is great, Marty, but this is academic speak. So let's look at the 3 bears example of Grice's maxim. The Papa Bear response is, it's 10:56 and 46 seconds a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time on October 25th, 2019. That is way more information than you need. It's all factual, it's all accurate. It's too much. It's morning. Also accurate, but not relevant in the context of what you're doing. And the Baby Bear response is, it's 10:56 a.m. That's what you're looking for when you're building these systems. Reconciling all this information, what was the user's intent, and how will you respond? Problem number 2 is the request and response interruptions. People do not just talk to your system like they do on the TV commercials. There's kids in the back seat. There's people running in. There's dogs barking. There's all kinds of stuff. They are almost always going to be interrupted. They're going to be embedded in another conversation. Again, you're going to have to work around this. buoys have a real problem with this. Multimodal interfaces go back to the screen permanence. They can glance away. You can turn the microphone off, and they can come back to their task, and they're still be engaged in it. In April of 2018, Alexa was still experiencing a 50% fail rate. It's not Amazon's fault. Alexa didn't hear the wake word. I didn't understand the question because there was background noise. Now, they've worked very hard at reducing this, but a lot of this is outside their control. Simply can't do anything about it. So you always have to be asking your work, how is my app going to deal with these interruptions? They're always going to happen. The phone's going to ring. They're going to get an email. A Slack channel's got something's going to come up to interrupt them. And that's when I mentioned earlier that multimodal interface, because you've got the screens, you can now keep going with some level of permanency. And the last one is basically learnability. People do not know what to say to these systems. They just don't. They're even different areas of the country. Questions are worded completely differently. And ironically, the better the AI and the natural language processing systems become, the more users assume this is content. So there's a whole bunch of different natural language processors out there. So you can go talk to one and it'll say, and it'll be really good and you'll be in context, and it'll answer your question. And you can go to the next device thinking this one's going to be able to do it as well, and no, not a chance. It'll come back and say something. You're like, what are you talking about? It's like going in and typing search results and it just comes back with something from the moon. Why did you come with that? And without context, it's going to return poor results, and the moment it does, they're going to go right back to Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes, which is, I think, the most requested thing. So all the AI and personalization algorithms are making rapid improvements. You still have to teach users. So when you're crafting these responses, if a user says, read my horoscope, which they'll say, your response needs to be something like, with a reminder, I have horoscopes for today from Astrology Daily. What is your sign? They'll learn very quickly to say, ask Astrology Daily for a horoscope for Leo. As these systems get smarter and smarter, the goal is they will get back to read my horoscope, and you'll know, the big data cloud in the sky, that the person talking, which person it is in the house, who they're asking, their birth date, all that information. But right now, we're trying to stay in the real world, and you don't have all that stuff yet. So the consequence of this poor learnability, this is another shocking, only 3% of Alexa skills have users after 2 weeks. Try them. Didn't work, didn't give them the results they expected, so they just quit using it after a while. So, because of your screens, again, you've got a multimodal interface that can increase the learnability of your skill in action by providing context. So those of you who have these devices, take a look at because keep in mind the numbers I showed you, these devices are out there. They're looking for they may not be able to interact with it completely the way they do on a smartphone, but these screens are going to make a huge difference in the usability of the skill. And one of the challenges you will face as you do this, and you do lots of testing and you go back, and I need it to be worded this way precisely, is the reconciliation of this stuff with your marketing department's brand voice, because you all have one. This is ask me how I know this. Test results and marketing speak and brand voices, what's efficient, don't always sync up, I guess is a nice way to put it. I now learn to work very closely with marketing when we start doing testing to see how we're going to get through all this. Just because if you go in this stuff and say, this is what it's going to say in the interface, they're going to go, no, 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 no. The other one, of course, is all the legal disclaimers that you have to click. Where, how are they accessing the terms and conditions? No, it's a voice interface. You want me to read them to them? That's not going to work either. So again, multimodal interfaces will solve a lot of these problems for you. So, and finally, the stick steps I gathered along the way to take with you as we go forward is voice first designs, regardless of what the device makers say, don't actually apply to these devices. they're not just voice interfaces. That's not the potential of what's here going forward. Don't have your assistant just read whatever is on the screen. Again, we ran a user, so I was testing a new system in the car, and we were going along, and we did like everyone else. It was new, and we would give a voice command, and then the head unit would talk back, and it was basically saying what was on the screen, which worked the first time through. Then we changed categories, and we asked the question again, and they said, so tell me which music you click, and what would you click, and what would you click? And they were looking at that screen, and not even, the voice wasn't, the first 2 words weren't out before they were already clicking the screens moving forward. But we learned that the voice alone has, once you have the screens, they're going to do this on their own. You don't have to show them. And presenting multiple choices on a single screen is that you're going to have far more complex navigation you had before. The voice stuff is all just 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have multiple choice, you're going to be able to fork off and be able to offer more compelling content and have them, especially from a discovery thing, how do they find new credit cards? How do they find new investment options? You're going to have a bunch of different options that you don't have in just a straight VUI interface. So user education and support tasks are particularly well suited to these. Those high-level product, like here's our 3 offerings with the checkmark list that you've seen on webs. Those are great in these. What's the difference between your premium checking and your select checking? Here you go. There's a chart. And they go, oh, which one of these would you like? Click, would you like to speak to a person? Absolutely. Can't do that with just voice. Those kind of things work really great with these devices. Anything that benefits from a chart or other data. Show me the performance for Apple Computer for the past 6 months. Chart. Boom. Anything like that. Questionnaires, surveys, risk assessments, all these things that have multiple choice responses are going to be really good on these devices. They can ask a question and they say, well, how much is a quote? Well, let's learn about your driving habits. How many miles per day do you drive? You can start with multiple choice items. Anything that's a step-by-step tutorial, training them how to do anything is awesome. They can go through, there's pictures, they can see screenshots, all this stuff is great. And, but if you have forms, or you have to provide critical detailed information, then stick with a GUI. It's not a voice thing. You're looking for that happy medium here. Never stop training your natural language processor. I don't know why I can't say that. Let's look at these 3 utterances. What is the balance of my checking account? What's my checking out balance? And how much money is in checking? They're all the same thing. Natural language, they don't automatically know that. You start training these to understand the variations. And you have to remember, you have to put in negative. Like, how do I balance my checking account has all the same words as the one. It's not the same intent. The user's not asking the same thing. So make sure you put in negative ones as well. People forget about those. And the amusing note was, remember that linguistics degree that your mom said you were going to be homeless and live in a box under a freeway for the rest of your life? Well, that's now a 6-figure job. Because the linguistics people are masters at this stuff, and usually as visual designers, we just didn't go there. So now I have a linguistics expert. So, whoops, it's clicking. It thinks there's 2 magic bullet points below this, apparently. When scoping, now you're going to have to put in at least 3 times extra for testing. Because no one knows this stuff. No one. You can't run to a database somewhere in the cloud and get all this information. These systems are all all this is too new. And users are still learning what they want. Contextual and field testing. If you're testing it in a lab, or like my one in the car, if they're not driving, it doesn't do me any good. It has to be in context. You have to see them in an office. You need to see them in their office. You need to see them with their family. Do some kind of, if any kind of field study that you can do to see how they're actually using and what they're actually talking to in these devices is a big deal. They're heavily, heavily dependent on context, especially your responses. They often happen in private spaces. I'm in my car driving. And they may only last a few seconds. And So if there's some way you can do contextual testing, will they let you film them? Will they let you just come and sit by them in their office with a device on their desk? One of the big things that we've seen with these particular devices is people using with their laptop and they have one sitting next to it, and the multimodal device is running their calendar and their reminders and all the other stuff while they're focused on their actual laptop doing work. Because those are terrific things that you can just speak and say, what time is my next appointment? And it'll not only speak, it'll show it to you. And finally, just prepare your org for updates. Engineering departments do not want to hear that we just launched something. By the way, I need you to push an update tomorrow. Because this is truly the wild, wild west. There are lots of suggestions, but no matter how carefully you test, these interfaces are new. Customers don't even know what they want, and what they like this month may completely change next month. So when you're building these things, make sure you've got some level in for, you've built in editing. You know you're going to have to change it. Build variables, use content management, something that you know you're going to have to be able to get control of things. And again, most orgs don't release non-bug related updates quickly. I guarantee you that you'll forget something that they think is just vital, even though you tested for 3 months and nobody mentioned it until now. 65 million people will send you an email about it the moment you release. Just be ready that for the org, that the engineering department knows that you're going to be ready for an update. So that was it, but thank you very much.
And we have time for a couple of questions. First off, have you used any voice interface within financial services that seem promising or right?
Before coming to SiriusXM, I worked for a consulting firm and I did a lot of work with Citi and with InvestNet. And to be honest, no. It was mostly form-based. There were a lot of risk assessments and questionnaires. People are reluctant, we've learned, to talk about financial out loud when other people can hear them. Like we know, for example, we were looking on payment in the car systems and no one wants to say their PIN. They won't say it out loud. There are things that, or their kids can hear it for whatever reason. The same way, it's like the running joke was you can ask anybody almost anything except their credit score. So when it comes to financial stuff, they haven't embraced this yet. I think the private spaces part of it is a big deal. The fact that you could be at your desk with a device next to you and you could talk to it then. But up to that point, a lot of the devices they're assuming are shared, and at that point they didn't. Again, Alexa and those guys, this speaker, the Echo Show, only came out in the third quarter of 2017, and the Google Home Assistant didn't show up until last year. So this is stuff that's only about a year and a half old, and people aren't used to it. And to be honest, we haven't had time to build things to take advantage of it yet.
And our next question, if 79% of all financial relationships are transactional, would you argue those features and services are ripe for VUIs?
It depends on the feature and the transaction. Can your customer give you a detailed skip-stepping answer? Like, if they know, if they come back and say, I want to open a checking account, and you can say, which one? And they will say a premium. Yes, you can probably go back and forth on that, but the moment complexity gets into it, or a multiple choice, which is really hard in because everybody's got a different situation. There's always an exception somewhere. So when, at that point, I would look to, you might try it in a VUI, but keep in mind, once they got a VUI, if they got one of these devices, they got the screens as well. I would definitely, if you've got the opportunity to put the speakers in, use the speakers, and more importantly, take a look at the phones and tablets and add the voice to those, because you've already got the visuals, a lot of thing that goes with it, but let them interact, because speech and readout. Is that it? Thank you.